Hello, everybody. Here is a position from the Norway chess tournament that took place in 2016. With the white pieces was Levon Aronian and Magnus Carlsen had the black pieces. In this position, it's black to move. So Magnus Carlsen uh, is on the move here. Aronian had just played the move castles, and as you can see here, there is no major, tactical sequence for black to employ. He can't win a queen or checkmate white. So here is where planning, uh, and analyzing the position comes into play, and it's very important so that you have a plan in these type of positions. It's real easy to go astray, right? And it's also real easy to play by rote in these positions. For instance, play a move, play like e6, knight bd7, or play bishop g4, uh, e6, knight bd7, not really be thinking about it. And that's a quick way to get into a bad position here. Um, Now, there are different plans, but it's important to have a plan. Um, But first, before you can really come up with the plan, you got to analyze the position and decide which side has an advantage, if there is an advantage to be had, or one side is worse. Sometimes the position is just equal. This position is pretty much equal, but even in equal positions, there's usually factors in the position where one side has an advantage over the other. And so, therefore, your plans should play to the strengths or strong points in your position, okay, and try to mitigate the weak points, right? In other words, in this position, Aronian uh, has control over the d4 e5 squares, so his central power is great. All right, so what he should try to do in this game is continue to concentrate his power in that area, continue to dominate and control the center until um, his more long-term strategic plans come to the forefront. For example, what do I mean by long-term strategic plans? Well, he has the bishop on g2. Okay, and then you have this pawn chain, this white pawn chain, d5, c6, and b7. So eventually, yeah, you would like to break that up and you know, uh, weaken, cause this to be weaker, and then use this powerful bishop to possibly win material along this file, or just cause black's pieces to become so discoordinated that you win material or create further weaknesses in the position. However, that's a long-term strategic goal. But in the short term, the strength of white's position is on these dark squares in the center of the board. Conversely, black should be trying to, um, neutralize uh, his white's influence over the dark squares. That's why one of the moves in this type of position is bishop g4. And you see how the proper analysis of the position will lead to moves that fit in the position. Often there's more, especially in these type of positions, usually there's more than one move that you could play. There's usually several moves, and they're connected with plans. And as long as you have assessed the position correctly, and the move that you choose is one, tactically sound, and two, fits in with the general assessment and plan that you've chosen, you should be just fine. So here, although Magnus Carlsen didn't play bishop g4 here, it's still a good move because it fits in with the general assessment of the position, in that white's main advantage is this control over the dark squares e5 and d4. So bishop g4 attacks this knight directly. I'm sorry, attacks this knight and then directly influences the the situation in the center. So, for example, play could continue knight c3, And then if black wanted to be real straightforward, he could just play bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, e5. Okay, now I'm not saying it's good or not, but it's just to illustrate a point. Okay, and there's actually nothing wrong with this. It's not, the black's not losing or anything. It's just a way to play. e4. Okay, so now this might come back later if white is able to destroy this pawns chain with a f3, or even at some time maybe take here and weaken d5. However, this is not bad right now. This is just an option. But notice how it deals with the white's control in the center. Another option is probably more normal, I guess, is to not get rid of the bishop that easily and unprovoked, but just continue developing with knight bd7. Notice how it addresses the same situation, the dark square in the center. So then you have d4. Okay, white's fighting for the center. Queen b6, c takes d5, and knight takes d5. Okay, just both sides fighting for the center. Another option is queen b6. Again, notice the influence in the center. And the specific threat, of course, is right here to take this pawn, where b takes c4 would lead to the bishop hanging. But all these moves fight for the center. d3, knight b4, queen d2, and now rook d8 from black. And now white has to keep an eye out for these type of ideas. Back to the game. Here Magnus chose to deal with the white's domination of these dark squares in the center in a different way. He played d takes c4, b takes c4, and then c5. And notice again how c5 fits in with the idea of challenging the dark squares. It's just another way to do it. Of course, each way has its pros and cons. For instance, the other way I showed you, black might have to part with the bishop pair prematurely. Here he preserves the bishop pair, but he gives up the control in d5 square now, the light squares. It gives more control to the white bishop on g2. So d3 happened, knight c6. Again, you see the influence here and here. This is a critical moment in the game. Aronian realizes that and plays knight e5 immediately, because he doesn't want black to clamp down here and take control of those dark squares. Magnus played knight a5. If he plays, if he just takes, this would be anti-positional, just giving up the control to to black, just giving up the just giving up the fight for those two squares. Another option is knight d4, but Aronian can play e3, just kicking him out, knight c6, and then you have these double pawns, which is basically what white wants in the position. Now, b takes c6, things could get pretty sharp here. And not to get too deep into the analysis, Magnus wanted to avoid this scenario also. This is why he chose knight a5, to try to avoid the damage on the queen with the queen side pawns. He's trying to keep his structure intact. However, what's the downside of knight a5? It gives up the fight for the dark squares. All right. So this fight that black is engaging in is not working out too good. The fact that the knight is on a5 is he's kind of making a concession that hey, it's not working out for me. And now white has increased his control over the dark squares in the center. Queen c1, queen c7. He's picking up the fight again. Knight d2, knight e8. Notice again, and I keep repeating this because it's important. Notice this how the fight is just over these dark squares in the center. All right, f4. All right, because that is the most important thing going on. When you look at, again, we'll go back to move 7. When you look at this position and you analyze it, you'll see that e4, e5, and d4, or that's if you can neutralize that, right? If you're black, if you can neutralize white's influence there, you basically have an equal game. That is white. That's white's major caveat here. His major positional advantage there. It's a slight advantage, but that's what he's playing for. Okay, this is not a King's Gambit where he's trying to rip your head off, by move 10, Joko or Evans Gambit or something like that, right? It's a small positional advantage, and it's important to identify the battlefield in these type of positions, or you could just drift and into a lost position. It's very easy to become lost from these type of positions. Let's go back to right here. So f4, now knight d6, played by Magnus. Bishop c3, and now again the idea from Aronian is to kind of try to make this knight look foolish by playing queen a3 and put more pressure there. Rook b8. At the same time, Magnus has to watch out for this bishop here, so he's basically engaging in a scorched earth policy, as I like to call it, where he's going to place this pawn on b6 and not give the bishop any targets to hit on the diagonal, and put his bishop on the diagonal and trade off. And hopefully for black, the h1 to a8 diagonal will become a liability. Queen a3, b6. But here's the downside. Since the knight is in this position, b takes, and now we had the pawn structure issue. Okay, so the battle was basically on e5 and d4, and now there's a new battlefield opening up now on the queen side, now that the pawns have been shattered. So now black has the bishop here, but now white has more targets on the queen side. So now the battle starts to shift. Notice white still maintains his initial advantage, which was the domination of the dark squares. Black has mitigated that somewhat because he's put a pawn on c5, and white can no longer put a piece here. Okay, so that's how chess is back and forth. But basically, white has still maintained what he had earlier. On the other hand, his bishop is on this diagonal, and again, it's a game of give and take. So the knight bd7, the knight b7, protecting these pawns. Aronian makes a decision to give up his other bishop, and he's just gonna grab material. Knight takes c5. Attacking the queen, by the way. Queen c7. d4. There's the theme again. Remember what I said about the dark squares. Notice dark squares in the center. All the moves are connected with that initial assessment in the position. Right? That initial assessment stayed the same. Aronian kept that advantage, but then he created more opportunities now on the queen side. Okay, so basically Carlsen's plan with knight a5, it didn't work out. All right, he he might have been caught off guard in this opening and just merely misjudged the system. Now he knew he had to fight for the dark squares, but his way of going about it, was was based on a misassessment, on miscalculation of the position. Because now, not only did he fail to offset White's control of the dark squares in the center, but now his whole queen side is shattered and he's down material. Rook d8, rook fd1, f6. Again, still trying to fight for those squares. Knight f3, e5 from Magnus, f takes, knight e5, bishop takes e5, d takes e5, rook takes, queen takes e5. Finally, right at move 26, Magnus finally gains control over the dark squares. However, it's too late because the other advantages. Remember, you always trade one advantage for the next. You never give up an advantage. You never just lose an advantage. Okay, because your opponent will be better. But it's perfectly acceptable to trade in one advantage. So here, Black has finally gained the dark squares, right? Actually, I can't even say that because the rook is on d1, still controlling d4. However, the queen is beautifully placed, centralized, right? And finally gained control. However, Black is down material, all right? Okay, he's down a pawn, and he might as well be down 2 pawns because these pawns in the A file are just horrible. Okay, so he's down material, and his king is exposed. So basically, the advantages that Aronian had earlier, he just merely exchanged them. Now he has attacking chances on the king to go along with his plus in material and Black's weak pawns. So the game ended quickly. Rook d8, king f7, queen f3, and this is all based on the king that's being exposed. Bishop f5, rook takes b8, queen takes b8, and g4. Okay, just real old-fashioned tactics. Queen b4, knight d3. This was Carlsen's last attempt. Basically, hoping for g takes f5 and queen c5 check with chances to hold. But of course, if Aronian is not trying to hear that, he just merely plays knight d3. This bishop is pinned, so it's not going anywhere. So Carlsen could check all he wants. Eventually, when the checks end, then this bishop gets captured. Okay, so I hope that was instructive. I know it was kind of long, but these positions are, it's not easy to explain, in 5 minutes. But anyway, I hope that it was helpful. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you on the next one.